Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the summer series here at Cyclone Fanatic, courtesy of our friends at the Ivy College of Business. Brent Blum is my special guest this week. Thank you for coming back.
As always, love the Ivy College of Business.
Yeah, huge fans, huge fans. I'm excited to have you back.
I'm, the first one was a huge upgrade over Williams. So, it's good to run it back. And I'm amped up for football season. I'm
I
amped
am
up for this
too.
entire athletic season and school year for that matter.
Oh wow,
It's coming
yeah.
up.
It is. We're literally 2 weeks away at this point from football kicking off at Jack Trice, which is crazy to think about. And I think, they should be moving into the dorms here soon, right?
I believe first day is the 26th.
Okay.
Well, first school day.
Yeah.
I got to tell this quick story. Thanks to our friends at the Ivy College of Business. My first day at Iowa State, I had, was it library 160? Did you
Yep.
guys have to do that too?
Yep.
Yep. I got lost trying to find the library. And this is back when they didn't have GPS. So I'm the idiot, like asking upperclassmen, hey, where's the library? And they're looking at me like,
Literally right
look at
there.
that big building right there, you dummy. So
They always tell, I don't know if they still do, but they told us that's the most failed class at Iowa State
because people just don't show.
because people don't show, and now it's all online. So people
no, so people don't even get
people
lost
forget
anymore.
about it. It was online during COVID. I don't know if it still is or not.
Got lost. I was like scared to death because I'm like first day and I didn't know what was going to happen. Where they like kick me out if I didn't find the library 160.
Well,
What was going to go on?
I imagine the size of your high school.
Yeah, and I went to Waukee and it was not small, but at the same time, it was for me, it was a little bit intimidating that first day. But look at me. I still have those. I'm not the only one. You have those dreams where you feel like you didn't take a final or you missed a class. And I'm almost 40 now, and it still drives me crazy. But good luck to the kids at the Ivy College of Business.
You guys are going to love it. No, you're giving me PTSD, and we're probably giving the listeners PTSD of being back on campus. But yes, can't wait to be back in Jack Trice. I'm super pumped, like you said, for this whole entire sports season. I think every team, we've been saying this all summer, right? Every team is poised to have a pretty good season. So, but something I thought we could talk about today, something I feel like is kind of lost in our conversations this summer about, the changing landscape of college football and just college athletics. And we talk a lot about the athletes and how the dynamic between them and their coaches and so on and so forth. But I want to talk about the fans. It's changing for the fans.
Yes.
It's changed so much probably from when you were a student and you were a fan, from when I was a student and a fan, and like what that looks like now. And you talked about it. I was inspired by when we were in Okoboji for the We Will golf tournament and then the road show. Someone in the crowd asked us, wow, I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but it was something along the lines of like, how has the Iowa State fan base evolved over time from our perspectives? We were fans in the stands at one point. You've covered the team to some capacity. You've been in the radio booth. I've been in the press box for a few years now.
Sure.
So I thought that would be just an interesting place to start.
I love it. And it's one of my favorite things to do. And the great thing, one of the reasons why I got out of the radio booth, this was before getting into this crazy NIL world, which kind of prevented me. And now I can maybe go back in, but anyway, it's another podcast for another day, was I wanted to take my little guys up to Jack Trice, just like my dad took me and my brothers up there.
Yeah.
But it has changed so much from even then. And I think, one thing that, and love Chris Williams, but he wasn't there in the 90s when it was really rough in a way.
Yeah.
There was a time, everyone, from 1989 to 1997, Iowa State did not win a conference road game in football. Think about that. 8 years worth.
Yeah.
And so when I was a kid, so I'm going to turn 40 next month. You in early 90s, you could come into Jack Trice Stadium and literally park wherever you wanted. We would park in lot D4, which is right by the stadium, for a 1:00 game. We'd show up at 11 o'clock and you could just kind of roll in wherever you wanted. Maybe my dad had a parking pass. I'm not really sure. But then we would play legitimately full games of football in the parking lot. Like, you did not have to worry about running into somebody else for a lot of those games because the attendance just wasn't there. It was nothing like it is today. And then you'd go into the game, and the result on the field often wasn't very inspiring. So we would play our own football games on the hills, and it was 11-on-11 football games. Like, look at the hills now, and you
Yeah.
cannot find a spot, even for
No.
like a blanket, a lot of times if you don't get there in time. And so the evolution of Iowa State, and football is the greatest example, the size of the fan base increasing has been immense.
hmm
And I think that kind of gets lost sometimes. Of there's been, and there are folks obviously older than me who remember what it was like at Clyde Williams Field, in the 50s and the 60s. And then the 70s were a really good decade for the most part for Iowa State. Then Iowa State didn't invest in athletics during that time period, which led us to a 20-year drought in the 80s and the 90s. And that's part of the reason why I'm so adamant about continuing to invest. Now it's the NIL is a new
Yeah.
landscape, but I would hate for Iowa State to lose momentum in athletics like it did in the 70s when Iowa State was winning 7-8 games a year in the top 25, going to bowl games. They decided not to invest that like other schools did, and then completely fell off the map in football. Now there were some other things in there, probably some poor hires, but the fan base dropped off significantly in the late 80s, early 90s, which led to some really rough times. And then Coach McCarney famously told the story when he got there. He bought donuts for the secretaries it was in the Olson building at the time. And when he went back, the donuts were all gone because they got eaten by rats. Like
Oh.
the facilities were so bad when he got there, and they've made so much progress. And now for somebody who grew up going to the games at Jack Trice, and it was Cyclone Stadium at the time in like 92 and 93, it is unrecognizable, the growth of the facilities for one, but just
Yeah.
Iowa State football in general. And I think sometimes we take that for granted, how far we've come. And sometimes you focus so much on, oh, look at what's next, what's next. And I think part of this conversation of being a fan is, I know it gets tiresome being, how much has changed for a fan.
Mhm.
But the fear is, if you don't continue to meet whatever that threshold is, then you fall back into that transition where Iowa State went from a really good program in the 70s to what happened in the 80s and the 90s. And, it's the life cycles. And Iowa State athletics is always going to be there. But it's just interesting, the different eras of how we've gotten to this place today, and how fans have been directly involved with each of those areas.
Well, and I think Iowa State, and I don't even say this like because I'm an Iowa State fan and I grew up in it. Well, kind of, not fully grew up. That's something I have shared, that I moved to Iowa when I was 12, 13, and I didn't even know college football existed, to be honest. It just wasn't a thing in
Sure.
Las Vegas.
Sure.
As you can imagine, UNLV was not something.
There's other things going on there.
Yeah. And so, but I really do think that Iowa State fans show up for Iowa State in a way that not a lot of other
100%
schools
true.
get, not even just across the Big 12, but I think just across football in general. Like the photos you see on social media of like schools in California, I think is insane. It's insane to me how empty it is, because I'm not used to seeing Jack Trice be empty. I think the last time I remember it was I got to be at the iconic 66-10 win over
Yes.
Patrick Mahomes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That's 8 years ago now.
Yeah.
Just,
And
oof.
that's the last time I remember seeing it super, super empty. And that was just because it was the last game of the
and it was
season.
cold,
It was freezing.
And the team had won 2 games.
There were still people there. There was still a good amount of people.
And I shared this up in Okoboji, and I got the year wrong, so I apologize. I blame the Ames Loggers. But in 2000, Iowa State won 9 games. The average attendance for Iowa State was right at 40,000 people. 40,000 people in 2000. Iowa State's opening game that year was against Ohio. Now, it was hot that day, but the attendance was 33,000. Iowa State now sells, I think, 47, 48, 49,000 season tickets alone. And they will be at 61,500 for the majority of the games. I don't know if they're all sold out. Maybe a couple of them are. Anyway, the point is, the growth has been unbelievable. And I would guess, if you do it by percentage, Iowa State's growth in football attendance has to be at the top of almost anybody, because a lot of those other schools were big then. Like, for example, our friends over in Iowa City, and getting great respect to them, they're pulling in something around 69,500. They actually reduced seating a couple of years ago
Mhm.
to add in more of those luxury areas.
Yeah.
You saw TCU drop down 15,000 people in their stadium. They only seat around 50,000. Same with Baylor. The new, now I know those are private schools, so it's not a perfect example, but you're
Mhm.
seeing a lot of these schools actually reduce seating, almost turn it into more of a professional model where then you're adding some more luxury
Yeah.
areas. And we'll see if Iowa State ever goes that path. But there are very few schools now that are, that's a, okay, do my math here. That is a 50% increase in average attendance,
Yeah.
which is wild in this era when every game is on television. And I think the other thing that people, it's hard to comprehend, especially if you're in college now, in 2001, Iowa State had 4 games on television for the 11.
Mhm.
So even if you wanted to watch them, you had to go to the game, and now every game is on television. So there's
Yeah.
more reasons not to go, and yet people still show up.
Yeah.
And I would say, why is that? I think the 80s and the 90s being so horrible in football really led to the fan base having this loyal mentality. And I think that's what separates Iowa State from pretty much anybody else I've seen across college sports. It's really easy to be a Georgia fan or Ohio State fan.
Right.
It has not been easy being an Iowa State fan.
It's
It
not.
really hasn't been. But it makes those times like we could have this year that much more enjoyable because you get put
Mhm.
up with a lot of crap along the way. And so you're never going to accuse an Iowa State fan of being a bandwagon fan because why would you? What bandwagon was there to get on? So it makes it that much more enjoyable. But it also, in that same light, it gives Iowa State an advantage because that loyalty isn't always dictated by your win-loss record.
Mhm.
And so Iowa State's been able to weather some of those storms. Like 2 years ago, Iowa State goes 4-8. Season tickets didn't drop off at all the next year.
Which is
And now
impressive.
but that is that hardiness, and people still want to be a part of it because it's more for Iowa State fans than you're winning and losing. Now, is it important to win and lose? Yes. And I would fear if Iowa State were to stack several 4-8
Yeah.
seasons back to back, what would happen? Then you're going to test people's patience.
Mhm.
We saw with the Steve Prohm era, and COVID was somewhat a part of it, but you saw attendance start to drop. And if he
Mhm.
would have kept around for another year, even with the COVID restrictions being lifted, I'm guessing the attendance would not have been great
Yep.
if Prohm was there for another year. So there is still, you need to win games.
Yeah.
But I encourage people, go around to an away game, not at Arrowhead, although Arrowhead's great. But go to another away game, and you'd be amazed at the lack of tailgating, the lack of atmosphere, the lack of fans who care.
Mhm.
I remember going to TCU when Iowa State played down there in 13. TCU needed to win to potentially stay in that BCS or whatever it was, the playoff conversation then. Maybe it was 14. It's all running together. But they had 10,000 empty seats
Yeah.
and they were undefeated, or they had one loss. So it's just like, can you imagine if Iowa State in that you would not be able to even find a seat in
Yeah.
that case. So Iowa State's fan base is a great separator, and I think it's that loyalty built in after going through some hard times that is why we're here today. And because of that growth, it has allowed the facilities to grow. It has
Mhm.
allowed the ability to keep a Matt Campbell and a TJ here. And that's why I'm still confident it's going to allow Iowa State to still succeed in whatever is next
Mhm.
in this new era. But it is a different experience for a fan. No question. I mean, you're asking fans to do so much more now. Back in the day, it was show up, buy season tickets, and that was about it.
Right.
Now you're being asked not only to get those season tickets, you need to have a donation to get
Mhm.
those season tickets. You need to buy a parking pass to get those season tickets. And then when you're there, you need to get concessions. And oh, by the way, you need to get an ESPN Plus subscription
Mhm.
and you need to watch this over here. And now here comes the NIL guy saying, oh, and you need to donate to We Will. And you need to buy the Ames Lager. So I understand, like, it has changed significantly. However, that dedication, that loyalty, and the numbers game has allowed Iowa State to stay competitive because, like we've said before, this isn't Oregon
Mhm.
where you have one person who is just funding the entire operation. We have to do this as a community. But then I also hope that makes the fans feel more of a connection to the teams, the school, the
Mhm.
players, because they are directly involved with any success on the field. So it's not being a bandwagon fan. You can say as a fan, I'm responsible for the success Iowa State's having. And that's why I hope you all this fall and winter
Mhm.
take some pride because your support of this whole operation is what is going to allow Iowa State to have success. And the asking's not going to stop. We're going to keep asking, but
Mhm.
the exchanges, so many good times, and think about now, just to make it full circle. And again, Chris would have interrupted me 10 times by now. So this is great. Now when my 6 and 4-year-old go to a games, they don't know Iowa State as what I was growing up in the 90s where you just go wherever you wanted. Now it's 61,500. The RV lot is packed.
Mhm.
Iowa State's going to be really good. Bowl games, Big 12 championships in basketball, the top 10 teams. The growth is phenomenal, but is because of those building blocks that the fans helped bring along the way to get us here.
Was tailgating the same when you were growing up? What was that like?
It was wide open. Like in the 90s, honestly, there wasn't people still tailgated.
Mhm.
Like again, Iowa State fans,
Yeah.
what is it, win or lose, we still booze. Like that
Yep.
was always a thing. And you still had a good time, but it was like now you pull in 2 hours before the game and those D lots and those C lots, you can't find a
Yeah.
spot. Then it was like I would play a flag football game. We would come up to the game and then we'd play another flag football game literally in D4. Like
Okay.
it was completely wide open.
Yeah.
And you had tents. Guys, there were tents in the south end zone. Like corporations would buy picnics during the game in the south end zone. There was a hot tub. Hot Spring Spa sponsored
Oh,
a hot
yes.
tub
I've heard of this.
in the end zone. Like that, it was very much minor league
Mhm.
compared to, because they needed to find ways to just get people interested. And so the hot tub was a big thing. That was honestly one of my dreams growing up, was I wanted to watch a game in the hot tub. Never happened. But now you got that south end zone with the Sukup End Zone Club
Mhm.
and all of the extras. And yeah, back then it was literally, it felt like a bigger high school game.
Mhm.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I could see that. Something Aiden brought this up earlier when he and I were just chatting before you got here. He said the way fans are able to connect with teams and interact with coaches, especially, has drastically changed, which is something
Another good point.
is something I've always thought of and used to drive me in my work. People will care about what you do if they care about the people you're covering. So that's like with wrestling. I want people to know the guys so that then they are invested, then they care. You might not understand it, but at least David Carr came from Ohio and his dad wrestled here. So now you know all
Sure.
these things. So you want to support him. With NIL, I feel like fans have definitely gotten the opportunity to be around coaches more than you ever would. Especially, I mean, how much people get to hang out with TJ Otzelberger and Matt Campbell is also
Yeah.
a very rare thing.
Well, that's interesting because I was thinking about this summer. So back
Mhm.
in the day, and this is pretty much before my time, but I
Mhm.
kind of caught the tail end of it. Johnny Orr, start with Johnny Orr and then transitioned into really the 90s.
Yeah.
They would have were essentially Cyclone clubs in every single county in Iowa.
Okay.
And so the tailgate tour wasn't the tailgate tour. It was Johnny Orr and Jim Walden and Jim Kreiner, another football coach back in the 80s, and then all the way up through McCarney. They would literally make 40 to 50 stops in the summer.
That's crazy.
They would play a golf outing during the day because my dad was on the Des Moines Cyclone Club board. And then they would do a dinner that night. They called it, I think it was the rubber chicken circuit because they always had bad chicken. And Johnny Orr would tell incredible jokes that you
Mhm.
probably would get canceled now. But that was kind of the fundraising before fundraising got a little bit more sophisticated. Now
Mhm.
the tailgate tours kind of replaced that, where now they have 8 stops.
Yep.
They're very strategic. They're bigger. They're not just all these one-offs at all these golf courses
Yeah.
throughout the county. But it does remind me of one of my favorite stories that I posted this on the message board before. It's 100% true. So Johnny Orr used to pick on Jim Kreiner. So Jim Kreiner, pretty young, and was not a very successful Iowa State coach.
Mhm.
Anyway, Orr would tell a story at these golf outings in Johnny's voice. He said, "How do you get 45,000 people to stand up and yell Jesus Christ?" and there was you either have to be the Reverend Billy Graham or Jim Kreiner at a football game. And again, because bad play calling. Anyway, it was one of Johnny's favorites. So those two guys would just go around and they would pick on each other, but they would do it all over the place and then mix in with golf with maybe 100 or so people.
Mhm.
And that's how it raised money. Now it's become so sophisticated where it was really just the tailgate tour is the obligation for the coaches. It's almost regressing back to those with the NIL world because I hear from, companies, individuals, donors, what they can't buy is that access.
Yeah.
And so being able to interact with the players, but with the
Mhm.
Coach Campbell, with the Coach Fenley, with the Coach Dresser, with the Coach Alzberger, that's kind of the fun thing for them. And I do feel that that has shifted a little bit and created a new way to identify. But then social media is another animal
Mhm.
where you feel like you know Rocco.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know Todd Bandauer. I didn't know anything about Todd Bandauer, and I met him this summer. But now you feel like you get to know these guys. You can buy their trading cards. We just released trading cards this week.
I saw that.
You can do so many neat things with them. That makes the fan experience different
Mhm.
because it costs a little bit more, but also you feel a deeper connection to them, and it's not just, oh, I'm going to watch you on a Saturday in the fall.
Yeah, it makes me think of Aiden and I's friendship with Ben Monroe, wrestler. He got
He got another scholarship.
Yeah, I saw that. They just announced today he got
There you
another
go.
big scholarship. He was seated with us at the regional training center. They do that big dinner.
Yep.
The site, I think it's called CRTC 100. It's basically this big dinner Dresser puts on, and people are able to buy tables and all of that. The whole team's there, the entire team, and they get separated throughout the tables. Same structure you do with yours. And we got seated with Ben Monroe, and now we're big fans.
Yeah.
So it's like the same thing. Suddenly, all these fans are being able to connect with maybe, not Rocco.
Yeah.
And you get to meet all
For
the
sure.
other guys who maybe don't used to not get as much attention before because, they weren't putting up huge stats on Saturday.
That's one of the favorite things we've been able to do, and it's not just the headliners, but we sent like 20 guys to a football camp that was
Mhm.
run in Iowa Falls, and they weren't all the big names, but I got so many messages from parents from that. It's like, my kid was an Iowa fan, or we didn't even know, but they just went because it was a
Yeah.
camp. And now, this player, I think one of them was Gabe Burkle. Gabe was so nice to my fourth grader that now he's a big fan and
Mhm.
wants to come to all of Gabe's games this fall.
Aw.
And it's just things like that. It's like,
Yeah.
that is cool. Like
Yep.
I remember when I was a kid, I met the Davis brothers, Troy and Darren Davis, and it was like a 30-second photo. And I was on cloud nine forever, and they didn't say a word to me. I just got my photo taken with them. And it was great. It was absolutely great. But now you can actually spend significant time with these folks and get to know them. And
Mhm.
that's where Iowa State has an advantage. Iowa State is the pro sport in this area. Now, of
Mhm.
course, we have minor league sports.
Right.
But when Iowa State does well, this whole area does well in a lot of respect because these are our celebrities. And
Mhm.
when you can meet your celebrity and they're awesome, like these Iowa State athletes are, it's just a really neat and impactful way. And that's one of the things I'm super proud of, how we've done things to, obviously the goal is to keep Iowa State competitive and get the
Right.
guys compensated, but then also building potentially lifelong fans through that legitimate interaction has been a trade-off and a part of this that I didn't envision, but it's maybe the most cool part.
Well, the fandom is its own culture, right? Like it's a selling point. When you're recruiting these athletes, it's like imagine you're the one on the field on Saturdays. So
Totally.
you're the one taking the court on in Hilton Coliseum. That in itself, coaches can't fake that. So to be able to be like, no, seriously, go spend a Saturday in Jack Trice.
Yep.
It's incredible.
I-
It's a crazy atmosphere.
I was talking to one of the new women's basketball players
Mhm.
who was up with us in Okoboji, and she said, "I just love talking to all these Cyclone fans. I had no idea there's this many everywhere."
Mhm.
And she's like, "I can't wait to play in Hilton." I was like, "Oh, you have no idea. That's another level."
Yeah, it's another piece.
I was like, "That is another level. Just wait and see." But even those interactions, we had 6 athletes there, and they were
Mhm.
so happy just to get the interaction, and
Yeah.
that is the impact that fans can have. And again, it's a lot of asking, and it's a lot of different. It's different than the '90s and 2000s, but I think as a fan, it's a really cool time too. You're having success,
Mhm.
but you also get to know these student athletes that are all very much a lot like you too. Especially if I remember when I was a student, and I had my first class. There were football players that were behind me. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a football player. Like
Yeah.
they're right behind me. Like,
I've
what
had the
do
same feeling.
do I talk? Do I? So I didn't. No, they're 19 years old, just like me. It's like it's not a big deal, but it's a different. You feel like you get to know them in a different way with social media. And as I tell the athletes, the more you can engage with individuals in those things, the more it's going to help you develop long-term relationships that will benefit you far down the road too. And that's another Iowa State advantage here is people do care about the people too. And that means maybe we can't give you the biggest paycheck, but 10 years down the road, we will remember what you did for Iowa State, and it could help far beyond that too.
Well, just look at the way, I mean, this is a fun topic because it's clearly impacted, just like, I don't even know how to refer to it, but the way the fans travel. I mean, look
Another
at how
huge
that,
thing. Yes.
look at how that dictated when Iowa State was selected for the, oh gosh, I'm blanking, when they played Notre Dame.
Yeah, that was the Camping World Bowl. Yeah.
Like all of the politics that went into being selected for that. And then
it jumped K-State to get it.
And then everything that went into fans going to Las Vegas.
Yep.
And then now the conversation around, well, where's the Big 12 tournament going to stay? Is it going to stay in Kansas City?
And people getting upset because Iowa State has an advantage. It's like, well, you could show up too, team.
Yeah, you can buy tickets too. But they just don't. They just don't like Iowa State fans. So again, that's like another thing, like you said, the fans get to go home knowing that you impacted that. The politics 100%. And all those business conversations with people in suits, it was like they were sitting there talking about the fans. And it also translates to look at the support for Tyrese Halliburton and Brock Purdy. I mean, Brock Purdy's jersey, didn't it like sell out at one point?
Yes.
And
yep.
I'm not even a 49ers fan, and I own a 49ers hoodie with Brock Purdy's name on it.
Same. Well, I'm a fan too. I'm not a 49ers fan. I'm a Brock fan. Yeah.
I'm a Brock Purdy fan. I mean, the sales that these teams are making off of these athletes alone, that impacts it too. So it's just been fun to see that side of it as well.
But because of that, because of the love shown to the Purdys, the Halliburtons, and the Yangs, when they're doing a vacation, they all come back to Ames because they want to reciprocate the love they felt as an athlete, as a student, but now all the love they're still getting from fans.
Yeah.
Like Niang spent a week here in July and like literally did everything. Like the guy is unbelievable. But Purdy came back for 4 days, did a camp, came to our We Will outing, actually spoke to the football team. He's done some things actually with the communications department academically, which nobody even knows. So you're right. It's a two-way street. And then what the current athletes see is you've got NFL stars, NBA stars coming back.
Right.
So when I make it there, I want to do the same thing. And it becomes like this cycle of everybody is treated so well here as athletes that they don't forget about it. And it continues on. And even Monte Morris, who doesn't necessarily get the attention that a George does, comes back every year for a camp.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't have to do that, but these guys feel as if Cyclone Nation is a family, and it is. And that's all because of the fans and your investment in them. And it's more than just financial. It's your time. It's showing up and just being there and being really a positive influence on most of these folks.
I mean, even just Ashley Jones, she's hanging out with us on Saturday,
that's right.
Isn't she?
She is.
Yeah.
Friday.
Sorry. Friday.
That's right.
It's Friday, guys.
Yeah. But yeah, that's exactly. I mean, it's one of the neat things is, and we all feel like we know Ashley now.
Yeah.
We watched her grow up. And, one of the aspects of college athletics that I'm a little bit fearful of is if you lose some of that connection of those 3, 4, 5-year athletes who you watch from freshman to grow. Now, they've got grown up, and on my end, now I'm friends with some of these guys on social media, and they have kids and the whole thing. And that's really neat. That's the neat part. But if if it gets too sideways with the portal and chasing the money every time, you're going to lose that part of it, which I don't think is great for the long term. And so trying to build in that continuity, and that's why our focus it's twofold. Obviously, our focus is on retention because you want to keep your best people.
Yeah.
But then it just develops those longer relationships between fan and player, which helps the greater good. And then, in my opinion, if you're a fan, so I'm just talking about my 6-year-old, he's now been known Iowa State for his whole life. When it's time to pick a college for him, hopefully he's smart enough to go to an Ivy League. I'm guessing with my genes, probably not. But it'll impact in the university because of that fandom on the front end through Iowa State. And that's why I'm a huge believer in the university continuing to invest in athletics in whatever way they can, because it helps the pipeline into the academic side.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
then the more students Iowa State creates, the better it is for the area. And it's just like a ripple effect.
Yeah. I'll ask you one last question. Do you have like a moment where you were like, okay, I'm an Iowa State fan? Or were you literally like out of the womb in your Iowa State? Like,
Yeah.
do you remember the moment you were like, yeah, this
So
is my
there
lifetime?
there is an image that my mom has shared with me. So I don't know if you know that everyone knows this. I think some people do. My mom went to Iowa, played tennis at Iowa, grew up in Iowa City. I was born in Iowa City.
Oh, wow.
So there is one good thing to come out of that. No, I'm kidding.
I was born there too. That makes two good
There you go,
things
two
come
of
out of
us.
Oh,
it.
We're
wow.
both on the same day.
Correct.
Just
That's
Oh
crazy.
my
Small
gosh.
world.
Yeah. That's so weird.
But no,
Anyway.
so there is a picture of me that my mom sends me every Cyhawk game of me in an Iowa sweatshirt.
Oh,
Just
how old were you?
like 4.
Okay.
I don't know, this is blackmail. That's what it
Child
is.
abuse is
Child
what it is.
abuse. No, I don't remember. I don't remember being anything but an Iowa State fan. So my dad went to Iowa State, so that was the connection. And quite honestly, it was a lot easier for us to go to an Iowa State game than an
Yeah.
Iowa game in the 90s, like 90, 91.
Yeah.
My first memory are 2 guys, Blaze Bryant and Victor Alexander. So both these guys played in like 89, 90. And I remember thinking, those are my guys. Like, I don't know why I was 5 or 6. Like, me and Victor Alexander do not have much alike at all. But I was like, that's my favorite player. And I remember my grandfather, who was a professor at Iowa, he would always be like, why did you? I mean, he followed sports, was like, why Iowa State? And so, but
Mhm.
anyway, it just became almost like a convenience deal. And then it just morphed into a point where I'm in kindergarten in West Des Moines, and they made you do for Cyhawk week, pick your
Yep.
favorite school. And in our class of 30 at Sacred Heart Elementary, 28 circled Iowa. Okay, this is 1990, 1991. And it was me and some other rando that picked Iowa State. I think they only did it because they liked the color.
Yep.
And I was adamant, no, we're going to turn this around. And it took 8 years after that. But honestly, one of the best days of my life was when Iowa State beat Iowa in Iowa City. The next month for Halloween, I went as the Kinnick Stadium scoreboard.
Oh my God.
I wrote 27-9 on a white T-shirt. So I was trolling even in 7th grade.
We need to dig that up.
I don't think there's any photos of that. But no, so there was never an option for me otherwise. I don't know how it happened, and it really, that decision as a 5-year-old kind of dictated, my entire journey. And I thought about going to Kansas out of high
Yeah.
school, but I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. I
Yeah.
was like, I cannot pick the same school that Rafe LaFrentz went to. Couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. So here we are.
Yeah. I feel like my freshman year of college, I'm sure you remember this, as your brain can hold so much information about Iowa State. It was the Thursday night game against Texas.
Yes. Yes.
I was a student in the student section. We got really close to the field because, we lined up, and I just remember yelling at the refs just like everybody else, lost my voice. And it was like that day. I was like, oh, this is it, huh?
Was that the Bugle game?
Oh gosh, I don't
It was.
remember.
It was. Just FYI.
Huh?
Jacob Park's last stand.
Not to trigger again.
Not to trigger again. Yeah.
Anyone.
No, I mean, I think as Cyclone fans, like, give yourselves a pat on the back.
Yeah.
I mean, really, this whole thing, and credit to Pollard, credit to McCarney. The thing is the relay race. Campbell, Hoiberg, all the people that got us here. But without the fan base, being at the northernmost school in the Big 12 would be impossible. It'd be an impossible task. But because the fans have supported at the level you all have, it has allowed Iowa State to build it up to this point where now you're in a situation where you're a borderline top 25 team. Would they get 29th in the preseason? I think you'll be top 10 in both men's and women's basketball and wrestling. Volleyball's prime for a great year. If you would have told me that in the 90s, I would have thought like I had died and gone to heaven. Like, honestly, that's the only thing I wanted. All I wanted as a kid was for Iowa State to make Sweet 16s and to like make a bowl game. I'd never seen Iowa State make a bowl game. And here we are now.
Look at where we're at.
So it's all because of the fans. And honestly, I give Chris Williams a little bit of credit, not as much as McCarney or Pollard. But the growth of Fanatic has really paired well, in my opinion, with the growth of the fan base. And I do think it's 1-to-1. When I was in college, there were maybe 4 or 5 people that would show up to these press conferences. It was your local, the Register had somebody, the Tribune at the time, and then maybe a station or two from local TV. But there were times where I would interview Dan McCarney when I was a student and working for Cyclone Nation, RIP. Thanks to that was the group Chris and I worked as students, and it was just me and Coach Mack, or me, Coach Mack, and Paul Clark from Rivals, and that was it. And now you go to any type of media availability, and it's all of these folks. It's because, and there are still people, and I appreciate this as fans, where you feel like you're underserved, and I agree. Like there should be more.
Yeah.
Like I would love Iowa State to have a dedicated writer for something like The Athletic or one of those things. But the point is, it has grown so much. Media attention has followed the fans. And as long as the fans support, the media will follow. But it is one-to-one in that somebody had to provide the coverage to get Iowa State on that growth trajectory. And I think Fanatic has filled a nice void of, when we were in college, there was nowhere to go and communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And so that's a nice thing of how Fanatic has grown to fill that void too. I think if I'm telling the story of the growth of Iowa State in this 25-year trajectory, like we're talking about, I think Cyclone Fanatic and just website and social media in general is a big part of that too.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the message boards alone for me in covering wrestling have had such an impact, because that's where the diehards are.
I don't think people realize this, but Fanatic, I believe, at one point was the most visited website in the state of Iowa. Might still be. Like even more than the Des Moines Register. And it's because the message boards. I mean, people but it's real. It's real. I don't just say that to get more advertisers for Chris, although he's not going to turn them down. But the point is, you all are so dedicated. And the other thing that Fanatic has is the longest, they call it, there's a term for it in marketing, but stickiness. So time you're logged into the site for stretches. I think the average for, if you're on Fanatic, is like several minutes, which is super long for a website anymore.
It is.
And that is attractive too for advertisers. But then honestly, I've talked to parents. Parents are on there too. Athletes are on there. They want to see the engagement of the fans. They are on social media all the time. And when they're looking at prospective schools, it's not just, what are you paying me? Is the team winning? It's, how do I fit in here with the fan base? And so that positivity, and mostly positive, there's always a fan base that has a couple oddballs, certainly helps. And so I guess the point is, pat yourself on the back. If you're listening to this, you are a part of Iowa State's success as well. And so I hope you feel pride this fall and this winter, because without you, this would not have been possible.
It's going to be a good year. I have a good feeling.
And we just got to keep it up.
Stay positive.
Stay positive.
Thank you so much, Brent.
Yeah, pleasure.
I appreciate you.
And again, you allowed me to talk unlike C-Dub. So this is, I'm good now.
He does that. He does interrupt, and he acknowledges it. But
we all have our flaws. No, I appreciate it, Jackie. Yeah, awesome conversation as always.
No, of course. As always, thanks to the Ivy College of Business. And yeah, we'll be back. I think we have one last episode for the summer. So, yep. Thanks, guys.